There. You can hear me now, Quilly. We got there. You're very welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. Shane Hannon with you right through until 5 p.m. Sorry about that little bit of dead air before the ad break there, but it is Christmas. Who cares? Let's all just relax. It's fine. You can get in touch with us at any stage across the day. We're on air until 5 o'clock. It's currently 5 minutes past 3. Text line is 53106. You can tweet us at Off the Ball, or indeed tweet myself if that suits your fancy. 53106. And at Shane Hannon01 I am on Twitter. It's 3 o'clock, and that means, as it does every week, it's time for OTB Football Saturday. The final one of the year, in fact, in association with Paddy Power. Please remember to gamble responsibly, and for more information visit donlouis.net. I'm delighted to be joined for the final OTB Football Saturday of the year by the former Irish international captain David Meyler, the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward, and indeed the Dundalk FC coach Shane Keegan. Lads, Merry Christmas, how are you?
Merry Christmas, Shane.
We got there in the end. We got there. I thought one of you lads was going to have to pick up and finish the show for us there, but
I was actually afraid that I was supposed to be presenting today there for 2 minutes.
Yeah, you're next Saturday, Johnny. You're next Saturday.
Yeah, I was wondering, did I get the dates wrong? I was reading a piece there by Alan Brazil from his book. It was published on the 42 last night, and he was going on about how when Best Mave won the Gold Cup, he basically was supposed to work for TalkSport the following morning, but he went on the beer at Cheltenham instead. He slept through his alarm and essentially got sacked. And I was like, God, am I supposed to be working here today presenting? But thankfully we got there in the end, Shane.
Got there in the end. We're sorted. But nice Christmas, lads. Everything. Sandy came, I assume, to the houses where Sandy was supposed to come to. It was all. I saw, David, I think on Twitter you had a special delivery from Hull City FC as well this Christmas.
Yeah, they sent me the new kit for my young fella, so that was nice. Threw a little Meyler 7 on the background, so that was very much appreciated.
Yeah, so listen, it's nice to get those little gifts from your old club as well. But Stephen's Day for you, David, was that when you were a professional footballer? Was that the Christmas festive period is clearly a busy one. You have games left, right and centre, barely time to breathe. You're trying to get some family time in as well as the training and the busy fixture schedule. So was that a time you enjoyed? Was it a time you didn't look forward to in some ways?
Oh, I loved it. I loved playing games regularly. Even there, as I was just watching the end of United and Leicester, you know, they were talking about Jake Humphries was asking questions about like all these games coming up. It's the best thing. You know, no player really wants to be trained all the time. Of course, you can't play a game every day, but when you're turning over, like they'll play today on Stephen's Day, they'll play on the 28th, they'll play on the 1st, they'll play on the 5th. It's what you want. Of course, if your team is doing well and you're winning, it's fantastic. If you're losing, you can't really see at what point is this going to turn around. But it is better to be playing a lot more games than it is, you know, training all the time.
Johnny, I was speaking to one of my colleagues off air before we come on, and talking about our Christmas dinner regulars. Most people is turkey and stuffing, bit of ham, whatever else. You go for goose. That's a rumour that's on the street these days, that Johnny Ward's actually a goose man instead of a turkey.
I just went for goose this year, yeah. Like, I cooked the dinner for the family, which I think is the second time I've ever done that. And turkey is just, it's a very bland meat, really. I wouldn't be a massive fan at all. And in fairness, my father totally was in agreement with me. So I went up to get a goose and brought it home on the train via Galway City. And I was kind of afraid that it was going to be on the turn by the time we got there yesterday. But it actually all went fairly swimmingly, Shane. And the goose was lovely, yeah. It's complemented the bacon quite well. And yeah, it was an all-round success, the old dinner. I don't know. I think turkey's very dry. It wouldn't float my boat anyway. 53106.
If you also had goose this Christmas, or indeed you share Johnny Ward's sentiments about turkey being too dry. But Shane Keegan, how was your Christmas? I know you. We spoke to you earlier in the year after the sad passing of Diego Maradona, and perhaps we'll touch on Maradona before the end of the show, given that it's the last episode of the year. But you have a signed Diego Maradona jersey hung proudly, especially now, I guess, given what's happened this year, up on your wall. No more signed memorabilia or bits and bobs this Christmas?
No, not this Christmas, Shane. My mother reminded me after that show and after Diego's passing to make sure that, given the value of it, that I'd added it to the house insurance in case anything was to ever happen to it, which was a fair point in fairness to her. But no, look, very enjoyable last couple of days. My wife's mum lives across the road. She took care of Christmas dinner for us, and up in my own mum today, we have 3 kids under the age of 5 in the house here at the moment. So if we see any celebrity guest appearances, you'll know who they are if they appear at any stage, but hopefully not. But yeah, we usually have about 10 minutes, Shane. I think between we log off around 4:05. We're back on around 5. Sorry, we log off around 5:24. We're back on about 4:05. That's when I have to dart downstairs and eat my Stevens' Day dinner. So bit of a rush job, but I'll manage it.
David, I noticed on Twitter yesterday you were kind of touting people's opinions on the I guess best value or best ever Premier League signing. It was something I think Sky Sports have been doing, but you got quite a response to it. I think it was, I'm looking at some of the responses. N'Golo Kante was quite a common one, but you had your own views, I think, as well.
Look, there's an argument for so many different players for all different reasons. The one for me, I went with Roy Keane. If you think of, obviously, when he signed for Manchester United, it was 3.75. It was a British transfer record at the time, whatever. But to go on and win 7 Premier League titles, nobody's had a bigger impact than signing for a club. So that's the reason I went for. Of course, look, there's a case for Thierry Henry, goes to Arsenal, helps them win a couple of Premier League titles. You know, he rewrites records. You've touched on Kante. Of course, then there'll be people who will bring up, say, Alan Shearer going to Newcastle and scoring the amount of goals he did. You know, Salah now at Liverpool, Van Dijk at Liverpool. You know, there's even people throwing Bruno Fernandes at me for the impact he's had. I think there's an endless argument that would go on, and I don't think you'd ever probably get a defiant answer. You know, of course, look, the one there that's eluded my mind would be Cristiano Ronaldo. But then, like, obviously that year that they, in 2008, when they won the Premier League and the Champions League, he won the Ballon d'Or, and he's the only player playing in the Premier League to ever win the Ballon d'Or. But I was talking about the greatest signing in Premier League history, and I think what Ronaldo did at Man United, there's no doubting that was fantastic, but he went on to achieve so much more at Real Madrid, and he kind of went on to have his worldwide dominance at Madrid, not at Manchester United. Of course, that last season before he left, he was the best player in the world. There's no doubt in that, but it kind of, the rest of it went on after Madrid. So it is it's an interesting, and of course, if there's an Irish man up for it, then I'm going to pick him. Yeah,
a couple of people had commented on your tweet. Thierry Henry, 11 million. Patrick Vieira, 3.5 million. Cesc Fabregas, 2.8 million. I guess Eric Cantona is another one as well. Shane and Johnny, any thoughts?
I think Keane was the first one that came to mind for me. I'm not surprised that David went for that. I guess you can factor in obviously the price that these players cost, but Keane at what at that time was obviously a lot of money. When you think about his influence in terms of what he won and all that, but you mustn't underestimate the culture of Manchester United while he was there. And I'm looking at them this morning, and I'm looking at clubs nowadays, and I'm listening to Keane giving out about players shaking hands after a somewhat friendly Manchester derby. And I've spent some of the Christmas watching old games, reruns of old Premier League games on the TV, and I suppose what's really dawned to me, I watched a game from Alex Ferguson's first season, I think, when Manchester United were playing before Keane arrived, and the work that they had to do to get to where they were. And I think Keane was he basically epitomised what that club became, that never say die attitude, that relentless hunger. Like, Keane is such a complex guy. I think, I'm not sure if he derived an awful lot of satisfaction from winning, but it was just his hatred of losing, and that kind of just manifests itself across the whole team. So it was as much as the fact that he was a world-class player who could dominate games. You probably would have been afraid to be in the Manchester United team if you had a bad game or if you didn't satisfy Roy Keane, and I don't think many players have had that influence on any team in the Premier League like he had, so he would be the one for me.
Yeah, for me, Shane. Yeah, it's to be honest with you, I think it's impossible to disagree with David's point on Roy. I think he is the one. But when I saw David's tweet, it actually it made me think in a slightly different way. I started to think of an actual signing. When I heard news of an actual signing, what was the one that had the biggest impact on me? And it brought me back to 1994. 94 World Cup. 1994 World Cup had not long finished, and I was about 12 at the time, and we're out in the front the lawn in our estate. There's 5 or 6 of us out having a game of heads and volleys, as you do at that age, and my dad came to the front door and shouted across to me to come in and have a look at teletext, and went in to find out that Spurs had signed Jurgen Klinsmann, which,
oh wow,
before foreigners were commonplace, Jurgen was one of the first big ones to arrive, and for this had not been rumoured in any of the tabloids or anything. It came out of absolutely nowhere, and I just remember being in complete shock and with a smile absolutely from ear to ear, thought this was the best news I'd ever heard. I really, really did. So that's probably the one in terms of an impact that, just never mind what he went on to do. He was obviously excellent for Spurs, but just on hearing news of a signing, that's probably the one that sticks with me most.
Just on that, Shane, I'd have a kind of a similar one. It was, you know, back in the day when you used to collect like the tokens from your Kellogg's cornflakes or whatever it was, and eventually you'd be waiting and waiting and waiting, like, and every day you'd be looking for the post to deliver whatever it was that you needed. But my one, and it was the same, I was on teletext every single morning, when are Liverpool going to sign Stan Collymore? And I was like, Collymore, is he signing today? Is he signing today? And I remember the mornings, like, it was the top headline, Collymore signs for Liverpool for 8.5 million or whatever it was, and I thought, here we go, we're going to win the title now, and obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah, I think Dimitar Berbatov for me was one. Wasn't there the deadline day signing where he was kind of hidden in the back of Alex Ferguson's car, or he was on the floor covered by a coat or something, so the media couldn't see him. But and I think the same night maybe Robinho signed for Manchester City. So yeah, I think I
think the Alan Sugar one, similar, Shane. I think the Alan Sugar one, or the Jurgen Klinsmann one, if I remember correctly, Alan Sugar took him out on a yacht, and they were out so that they could get away from the media or away from being seen or anything, and just took him out on a yacht, and apparently, you know, kind of said to him, I'm going to throw you overboard unless you put your name down here. But yeah, he came back from this yacht trip signed as a Spurs player anyway. Fair play to Sugar.
David, can I just pick up on something Johnny said there earlier, referencing the Roy Keane comments about, you know, players hugging, and I think he was referencing Harry Maguire and John Stones maybe were embracing. Clearly, probably neighbours in Manchester, good friends with England as well. I mean, when you were lining out for the likes of Hull in your local derbies against Leeds, or whoever it might be in the local area, maybe Sheffield United as well, or even with Sunderland, the obvious rivalry there with Newcastle, were you more conscious after those games that, you know, we're on TV here, we can't be seen to be hugging players of this team, even though you might be friends with some of the players?
I think the game has just evolved so much in the last, you know, 10 years. I completely get Roy's thing. You know, it's Manchester United against Manchester City. It's kind of, to him, it's that biggest game. Of course, look, City had probably, in the last few years, have probably become more of a rival. But at the same time, nowadays, everyone, the biggest thing, I suppose if I'll go on a little rant here, but if you look at England, the biggest problem England have had, you know, with all the fantastic players they've had over the last 10, 15 years, it was, you know, the Manchester United boys, they seem to hate the Chelsea boys, the Arsenal boys. So when they were away, they never really got on. And now this new England group that, you know, obviously got to a World Cup semi-final, whatever, you know, they all seem to get on. And now it's just kind of the norm. It's kind of, we play the game and then everybody after does hug and kiss. I think for me, it was kind of more, after I'd finished the game, I'd gone into the change room, you know, that it was kind of done. If you'd get your shower, you'd come out, then you'd kind of talk to the people that you were close to. Depending on the game, like, there's so many different factors. If I'd won a game, I'd have no problem standing out on the pitch talking to anyone. Do you know what I mean? Because you feel good because you played and you've won. If I'd lost, I certainly wasn't hanging around out there for, you know, it was always give my manager ammunition to come after me, that, like, you know, your head's not in the right place, you're too busy talking to your mate or whatever. Though I do see it, yeah. Look, those games used to be fantastic. And then it's always interesting when you hear Roy speak about, you know, I wouldn't be hugging anyone, I don't like this, whatever. And then it pops up underneath his name, played in 12 Manchester derbies, he never lost one. You know, then it resonates why he took so much pride in winning. I think probably Johnny's probably right, he hated losing more than the fact of winning. I think that's what probably drove him on.
And I think there was a good tweet as well at the time where someone had basically said, tried to search Google Images for an image of Roy Keane hugging someone so that we could call in a contradictor, and it was just literally a photo of him with someone by the neck, and it was as close as you could get to a hug from Roy Keane's perspective. Like, Shane, well,
I tell you, sorry, Shane, to cross you, but I tell you one thing. There was actually an interesting one that most of you wouldn't have seen at the time, but I was on the bench when Robbie Brady scored against Italy, right? And after the game, Gigi Buffon didn't play in the game, but he actually went over and he hugged Martin and Roy. To kind of say, like, well done, you know, he's just big, friendly Italian fella. But even then, Roy was kind of a bit like, get off me, like, you know, and we just obviously qualified for the last 16. I'll never forget it, because you kind of see these monumental players who've, you know, look, Buffon's in history for what he's achieved and he's still going. But he comes across, like, and there's that kind of, you know, he's like, well done, you know, and the big Italian accent, he wants a hug, and it's kind of like, get off me, like, you know what I mean?
I think if we'd been on an Ireland team that lost 10-0 to Italy, any of the four of us would gladly have accepted a hug from Gigi Buffon, to be fair, like, you know.
Well, I'll go another one. I reckon Roy's going to ring me after and go mad. But we played.
No, keep going, David. Keep going.
We played. If you remember, we played Italy before the World Cup in Brazil. So that'd have been 18. No, it wouldn't have. When would that have been? 14. We played them in Fulham. If you remember, just before the World Cup, Martin O'Neill would have been in charge. I'll never forget it. It was after the game. We were kind of waiting for the bus to arrive, and the players were outside. Roy was there, whatever. But Pirlo went over to him and to like shake his hand and say hello, and and Daniel De Rossi went up to Roy and asked Roy for a photo. And it's like, as much as you're looking, kind of going, Jesus, these fellas like are World Cup winners. They're phenomenal players, but they're all going up to him. It just showed. You see a lot of people nowadays on social media go, Roy Keane wasn't that great, he was just a good captain. But it shows that the level of respect he has off those types of players, that how good he really was.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Johnny, what did you make of the whole thing? Roy's comments about the hugs. It's probably taken out of context in some ways that he was just probably trying to be a little bit controversial. He's a pundit after all, but his comments resonated with a lot of people, I think.
No, absolutely. But you said there, Shane, he's a pundit after all. Like Roy Keane's managerial currency is, it's if not on the floor, like he's not in line for any good job. And one of the reasons he's not in line for a good job is because that sort of attitude is probably to extrapolate on what. What David was saying there, the game has just evolved. It's evolved so quickly. You're looking at Solskjaer today, and Solskjaer is sort of smiling after the game and giving a hug to Brendan Rodgers. And I'm like, well, you've lost the lead twice in that game, and you certainly shouldn't be losing the second lead. Like Alex Ferguson would not have been smiling after that game. That was definitely 2 points lost for Manchester United. But maybe Solskjaer is more in tune with dealing with the dressing room of Pogba's and Fernandez's and all these characters, because I don't think Roy Keane's way of looking at things is embraced by the modern day player who's going to be on Instagram before he's taking his boots off. Maybe it's a different philosophy. But I would have, if you have the right characters around that team in which Roy Keane plays, you're going to win so many more games than you would if you're going to get like a 1-1 draw at Leicester today, because that was his absolute hatred of losing. And just that thing about after the Manchester United derby, I can completely see where he's coming from, but I just don't think that's where the Premier League is anymore. I was looking at all these old games of brilliant games when the Premier League was predominantly British, and when the English football was predominantly British and Irish players. It's now a real global league with players from all over the world, and these derby games, with nobody there in particular, they probably just don't mean what they did.
Yeah, it's
Shane, I'll give you one without names, so Johnny Ward needn't push me for the names. I'll give it to him off air, but I'll give you one
off air at half time, Shane.
I know for definite, because the man told me himself. I know of a League of Ireland manager who, I was going to say FAI Cup final, it wasn't. It was an FAI Cup semi-final. Had his team picked for a game, and one of the players in his starting 11 was set to come up against a previous team of his. And when they got to the match venue, you tend to go out and have a look and walk around the pitch, see what the grass feels like, all that kind of crack. He got chatting to his old teammates, and the manager thought that he looked far too comfortable with all his own teammates, and it looked like he was ready for war, and made a late change to his starting 11.
It's a fascinating one, like the psychology. Some managers wouldn't bat an eyelid at that sort of thing, and I'm sure Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't bat an eyelid. I mean, like even in your dressing room, not that I want all the trade secrets from inside the Oriel Park dressing room, Shane, but when Dundalk play Shamrock Rovers, for example, I'm not going to suggest it's the old school newspaper cuttings on the wall, that John O'Mahony talking about I think it was the Galway Connacht final in 1988. Clipping out newspaper cuttings given out about his players. But when Dundalk play Shamrock Rovers, for example, or one of their main rivals, or even in play Cork City in years gone by, is the atmosphere noticeably different in the dressing room? Yeah,
I think it probably is, to be fair. Look, there is a bit of to and fro between Dundalk and Rovers, and there is a genuine bit of niggle between the two clubs, which is a good thing in my opinion. There should be genuine niggle between the two teams, and no, I don't think any of the Dundalk players or any of the Shamrock Rovers players, for that point, would have wanted been seen to be conversing with each other out on the pitch. Certainly a FAI Cup final. The only conversation I saw FAI Cup final day was between Pat Hope and Rory Gaffney. They're both Galway lads. Neither of them were able to play on the day due to injury. I don't think there's anything wrong with the two of them having a little bit of a chat with each other as in the build up to the game, but I wouldn't have seen anybody kind of any of the players who were set to kick lumps out of each other out on the pitch having a conversation with each other. And it's just a state of mind. You just don't want to create the wrong impression in your teammates' heads, in your manager's head, and even in terms of where you're trying to get yourself to psychologically. You know, the last thing you need really is to be having a good friendly chat, even if it is a guy chat away after the game, no problem. But before it, you need to be in a different state of mind, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're listening to Shane Keegan there, the Dundalk FC coach, Johnny Ward, broadcaster and journalist, and the former Irish international captain David Meyler, with myself, Shane, Hannon. We're on air until 5 o'clock this evening with OTB Football Saturday. As I mentioned, it's the last one of the year. There is action ongoing as well in the Premier League that I should bring you up to date with. 26 minutes gone at Villa Park. Aston Villa 1, Crystal Palace 0. Bertrand Traore with an early goal in that one. The only other 3 o'clock game is Fulham and Southampton, which remains scoreless. Arsenal-Chelsea, of course, at 5:30. We'll chat a bit about Arsenal later on, no doubt. And then at 8 p.m. this evening, Manchester City against Newcastle and Sheffield United against Everton. But a little bit earlier, lads, King Power Stadium, Leicester City 2, Manchester United 2. Pretty entertaining game, I think it's fair to say, David. I don't know what you made of the whole thing.
I thought it was a good game. I really enjoyed it now. Both teams kind of went at each other. Of course, Leicester kind of have that little defensive way to counter-attack, of course, when you've got a player like Maddison and then, of course, the pace with Barnes and Harvey Barnes, and Jamie Vardy. But United, I think, they'll be kicking themselves that, you get in front twice and then you concede, you lose the lead twice. And then you looked at probably the Rashford header and then obviously the save Kasper Schmeichel makes as well as another fantastic one. It was kind of, on the balance of play, I'd say a fair enough result, but you'd be I think United would be a little bit more disappointed leading 2-1 and then, giving up a second goal to kind of draw the game. So they'll be frustrated with themselves there.
When the lads there mention, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer smiling afterwards after a result, I guess it's a draw and it's away from home, so they can take a point and run with it, I guess. It doesn't leave them out of a title race necessarily, but does it disappoint you to see the likes of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer smiling after certain poor results for United this season?
Well, I'm not really fussed if he smiles or whatever after the game. I think he'll be. It's just kind of his character, isn't it? I don't know him personally, but he seems to be a happy-go-lucky fella that is smiling. You never really see him get too frustrated or too angry. Obviously, he'll know that Leicester are a very good team. They're up around the top of the table for a reason, so it's always going to be a tough one for United. But he'll be looking at it thinking, yeah, he spoke after about the chances Marcus had, that he should have probably scored more. But at the same time, it is probably a good result in the way that you've not lost. But on the flip side, that you probably have to be able to see those games out and make sure that you do come away with the 3 points, because there was a massive opportunity for him to win. There wasn't long left in the game, and then to probably concede in the manner in which they did, that the left side with Luke Shaw, that don't close down the ball. Vardy shows a good bit of movement. I know it does get a deflection off Twanzebe, but at the same time, it was probably a goal he felt they could have avoided.
I guess we have to talk about Bruno Fernandes after that game. I think one of the stats that they came up with afterwards was 31 goal involvements now for United in the last 28 games, I think. Johnny, I guess United would be a long way off where they currently are without Bruno Fernandes. I mean, before he arrived, they found it very difficult to create chances, never mind take them. So how impressed were you with Bruno today, and I guess in recent games as well?
Yeah, he's just that different bit of quality, even when he's not doing an awful lot in the game. And, he was quite sloppy for the first goal, give the ball away needlessly. But that finish is world class. And in fairness to Cavani with that finish against Everton during the week, world class finish in tight games. Just are going to give you, points that you wouldn't otherwise have. And I was just looking back today because myself, Nathan, and Dan are in another. I mean, there must have been about 1 million WhatsApp groups. It's like everyone, but it's like, what do I need another WhatsApp group? But we're in myself and Dan and Nathan are in a group, and I remember saying I could see Man United challenging this season, and the lads were kind of saying they're a long way off it. And I was looking back to when I made that comment, and it was actually in late June of this year. It feels like it was about like a year and a half ago. It's just that kind of year that we've had. But I was just saying that they have the kind of the talent in terms of counter-attacking ability to kind of win games against good opposition. And today, like at times, they were absolutely brilliant. They have this, like McTominay winning the ball for a great chance that Rashford had. Rashford obviously scoring, Rashford missing crucial chances. They were very good in many parts today, and a point at Leicester on the face with Leicester second in the table. It was a very good result, and they could bring Pogba off the bench, they could bring Cavani off the bench, who was absolutely vital in the goal, and obviously Fernandes, who's made them into a completely different team. So I'm like, I'm watching the game and I'm thinking, I think they actually aren't that far off challenging, and if they can, their next two games are very, very winnable home games. They're going to go, into the next phase of games in a really good state, and then they give away a really sloppy goal after defending quite well in the game. So I kind of still a bit confused by them, but I definitely think they are making progress. And it wouldn't amaze me if they mounted some sort of a title challenge, but they will lead Liverpool to falter, and that's probably a bit of an if.
Do you agree with that, Shane? Do you think United can realistically be title contenders come May?
Look, Shane, if there's one way you want to look a fool, it's commenting on Solskjaer, because every time he goes in a good run and you start praising him, they go and get beaten by Burnley or somebody like that, and as soon as he looks like he's on the verge of being sacked, he pulls a master stroke out of somewhere. They do look very, very good. I mean, if you go back to David's question of best Premier League signings, I don't think a player can have done much more in a 12-month period than Bruno Fernandes has done to try and take that award, to be honest with you. He's been absolutely outstanding for them. He really, really has. Like, his level of consistency is just ridiculous. It really, really is incredible. But yeah, no, I can't see them going the whole hog with Liverpool, really, to be honest with you, or whoever else is up there at the end. To be honest with you, I'd nearly be more interested or more inclined to pass a couple of comments on Leicester today. I thought they were fantastic again. I think they're having a brilliant season. I think Brendan Rodgers is doing an amazing job. Like, you look at, like, they were without I can never pronounce his name correctly, but Soyuncu, or however you pronounce it, again today they were without Pereira. Like, Soyuncu for them is every bit as important to them as Virgil van Dijk is for Liverpool. And yet they're getting these results. They beat Spurs last week. Obviously, they've got a decent point again today. They played the first, I would say 6, 7, 8, 9 games possibly without James Maddison, who effectively is their Bruno Fernandes. Like, to be in the position that they're in at the moment, they've had an awful run with injuries, and they're still right there. And again, like, what more can you say about Vardy? Like, I know, as David says, he got a bit of a deflection, but I mean,
he's more goals against the top 6 than any other player.
He's incredible, lads. Like, I saw one the other day, I can't remember what he was on, but there was talks that there's supposed to be a movie coming out of his life, and my initial instinct was, this is a bit ridiculous. And then the more I started to think about it, like, if any Premier League player deserves a movie about their life, it's Jamie Vardy.
Who plays him, Shane, in the movie?
Who will play him, yeah.
I don't know. I think he was. They were trying to push him on that. I think he knows, but he wouldn't reveal it now. But I mean, 10 years ago, this guy was playing for Stockbridge Town Steelers. Like, he's had an incredible career trajectory. And to be honest with you, at the start of every season for the last 2 or 3 years, I've said to myself, right, he's a centre forward who primarily relies on pace. He's now heading into he's 33 now at this stage. Like, this is going to be the year that his decline starts. But I would have said that last year. I possibly would have said that at the start of the previous year. Like, certainly after they won the Premier League, I says, right, that's Vardy's high point. We're not going to see, performances of that level again from him in the next 2-3 years. I mean, he's made an absolute idiot of me. I just love him. I just absolutely love watching him, because he makes no sense to me. He makes no sense to me.
On that as well, which is quite telling, Shane, you listed all those performances Leicester have gotten, often without their best team this season. And when they went to Anfield, they were absolutely battered. And Liverpool weren't at their best in terms of their starting 11 that day as well. And that's quite interesting, because they've been really competitive, like beat Man City away, obviously beat Spurs away, went to Anfield and were battered. And I think that's probably why Liverpool are such hot favourites.
David, did you ever play, like, I guess Parchy Sung comes to mind for me, for Manchester United, where a player who just really rises to the occasion on the big days, and you throw him in for the massive games, probably play him a little bit less in the lesser games. But did you ever have a teammate who, you might have seen as perhaps a pretty good player, but when they played the big teams, they became almost something else?
Oh, you've got me on the spot there, Shane. To have to think of that. I always had a habit of scoring against the big teams, or I played a lot of big games. I got thrown in, so I'll pick myself. I know, if you look at it, even say obviously during Martin's period, I played a lot of the big away games. It was kind of, you knew what you were getting. I would just come out and give you a shift for 90 minutes, and I wasn't afraid to do the hard running or make the tackle. So I'll pick myself.
You mentioned Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, lads, there. Let's hear from the Manchester United manager. He was speaking to BT Sport after today's 2-2 draw at Leicester City.
Ollie, did you think you'd done enough to win today, to take the 3 points?
You can't think that before the game's over and the whistle's blown. So, of course, disappointed that we don't win tonight this afternoon. Loads of big chances, and we could have finished it off. But then again, they're a very dangerous side, quality side. And the goal from Vardy just shows the quality, his quality.
Bruno's involved in everything, as he almost always is.
Always is.
Delivered the goal.
Yeah, good goal, good pass by Edinson, good timing. We just had a similar type of chance before, Anthony's chance. So you can't celebrate. You just don't know if it's a goal or offside. But well timed, good finish.
Yeah, it was the pattern throughout the entire game. Go back to the first half. Marcus Rashford missed an absolute sitter early on, but kept his composure to score the second.
Very good goal that he scored, and of course he knows that his first chance is a glorious one. It's a big one, and it seems like he's finished his header before the ball came and he hit it on top of his head. So just one of those things.
And their goal, do you think it should have been closed down quicker, Harvey Barnes?
Both goals should have been closed down quicker. First one definitely, second one as well down the side there. We should manage to stop the cross. So you always look at the goals conceded that we should have done better.
It's a busy time of year. The whole year's been busy, but especially busy at the moment. What does this do to the top of the table? What does it do to your momentum right now?
Well, of course, we got a game in 3 days. We got an extra recovery day, which we will use wisely. And 1 point is not the worst result, but we're disappointed that we didn't get away with 3 here, because it's a very good side we're playing against.
And just a quick update on Lindelof. Looked like he hurt his back again. Yeah,
he's struggling with his back, so he's struggled for a little while. So we might have to do something. Let's see what it is.
Thanks, Ollie.
Cheers.
Yeah, that's the Manchester United manager, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, speaking after today's 2-0 draw with Leicester City. United took the lead twice in that game, once in each half, but ultimately only came away with just a point. He mentioned they have a busy period coming up. I mean, they have Wolves at home next. That's on Tuesday the 29th of December. Then it's home to Aston Villa on New Year's Day. Then they have that EFL Cup semi-final, of course, against Manchester City. And then the FA Cup third round against Watford, all before the 9th of January. So a busy period for United. I mean, lads, I don't know what you make of his tinkering with the team, and you know, Pogba was left on the bench again today. Donny van de Beek was left on the bench. Is that something that the players get upset with, David, during a festive period? Do they understand that a manager needs to bring players in and out, and that maybe game time is something that comes few and far between for certain players?
But even so, at the same time, I know he touched on Lindelof, so you imagine Tuanzebe will start the next game. But at the same time, he'll probably still pick McTominay, Fred, Bruno. I imagine Dan James obviously didn't have the best game. He wasn't as good as he was against Leeds, so you imagine Greenwood will come in. But the others don't really change. You can talk about rotation. The thing is, you want to have your best 11 playing all the time. The big thing about Pogba is he actually makes a massive difference to games when he comes on, whenever it be. I think he came on at 51, 52 today, and he made a huge impact. I thought he played very well when he came on. Just add something different to them. But at the same time, the question is, if you're not in the team, you've got to ask yourself what you're not doing in training. You know, obviously when these games are coming thick and fast, it is easy for the manager to make changes, but you've got to be, you know, doing everything right you can. There'll be plenty of, like you said, there's plenty of games. They've got Wolves, Aston Villa, Man City coming up, then Watford and FA Cup, which will probably be a complete overhaul of an 11. But these next 3 games are huge, because the 2 games at home against Wolves and Villa, they need to get 6 points if they're going to be realistically, you know, challenging for a title. You've got to be winning your home games, and we know that United's home form hasn't been good enough.
You do wonder as well, Shane, about just the reality of sort of being in management and not being in management, and what we spoke about Roy Keane, but Paul Scholes sort of saying after the game, like Barcelona play 60 games in a season, like, you know, you just pick your best team. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's kind of what he was saying. But Paul Scholes, apart from obviously an abortive spell at Oldham, which was a basket case for club. He hasn't really been a football manager. And for Solskjaer, who's made this point, he made the point after, I think it was the Everton game earlier this season. Like you mentioned it there, they obviously played Everton the other day, played today, play on the 29th, play on the 1st. This is a kind of a particularly hectic schedule because of COVID. I can't see how these players are expected to just perform to the top level with that sort of a fixture list and not get injured or not suffer a dip in form. And I think rotation, as much as players obviously want to be playing, I can't see how it's not in some players' benefits to at least like to be bringing Pogba and Cavani off the bench. Martial is too frustrated to be playing all the time anyway. Now he has to mix up his back four as well. I don't know if that fixture schedule is actually compatible with even athletes at the top level being able to perform at their best, because it's so heavily loaded and it's very, very difficult. And I can see why both Klopp and Solskjaer came up with that in recent months.
I just have to mention, Johnny, I totally blanked it, but your Christmas tree looks absolutely divine in the background there. It's incredible showing. We get some of the lads getting a bit of abuse for their Christmas tree efforts this year, and to be fair, a lot of us were in front of white walls, for myself in an attic in Monaghan, but you've put in a real effort there. I mean, I know David has the football, the Premier League jerseys he swapped there, so that's hard to compete with. But fair play, John.
Down big time here, Shane.
Yeah, well, Shane has a remarkable Skype effect there, where like the background is a complete kind of mirage going on. But first of all, Shane Hannon, I'm disappointed that after all my various points there, you pick out the Christmas tree as the one to follow on. Secondly, this isn't my house. This is my sister's house. I don't have a Christmas tree in my house, so yeah,
Johnny, we already know your punditry and your analysis is fantastic, Johnny. That's a given, so I didn't have to pick up on that. Someone's texted in. Any of the lads go for a Christmas swim? This was the first year since 1990 I haven't gone for one due to COVID and not wanting to take any chances. Paul and Malahide, lads, is that a tradition for any of you?
Yeah, Stevens' Day would probably be my favourite day of the year, Shane, to be honest with you. So it would. So I'm absolutely heartbroken with it. It'd be a fairly common thing for us all to get together in the local every Stevens' Day. I'll tell you, I actually had to pull a bit of a stroke. I went out about the Saturday night before last into the local, and we were having a few pints, and the owner comes out to me and says, listen, he says, you may get me a Dundalk jersey, a signed Dundalk jersey after the year you're after having. I want to stick it up on the wall. So I said, no problem at all, Glenn, no problem. So later in the night, I turned around to the bar staff and said, listen, can you stick me down there for a table for Stevens' Day? And they informed me I was about 2 months too late, that Stevens' Day tables had been booked up. So I arrived back into Glen last week with his signed Dundalk jersey in one hand and went to hand it to him and had to inform him that it came with conditions. He's going to have to rearrange the floor plan. So he was. So needless to say, he said he'd sort that out. But it's a headache he never had to deal with in the end. None of us were able to get the Stevens' Day pint in today, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hopefully sometime soon we'll get those pints in. We'll get the stout. The stout out of a can is wearing a little bit thin at the moment, it has to be said. But just before we leave Manchester United, lads, you mentioned, Johnny, I think it was, Paul Scholes speaking after the game, and they kind of touched on Edinson Cavani and the fact that, he's into his 30s, well into his 30s at this stage. And when United signed him, it was fairly negative, the quarters inside and outside the club, people saying this is not the signing United need to be making. It's not a progressive signing. It's not one of these young players that's going to be at the club for a long time to come. But so far he's done a remarkable job. He scored midweek against Everton, again set up Bruno Fernandes for the goal today. Regardless of fitness, he seems to be a fairly fit footballer, but does he need to play more? I don't know which one of you wants to take this, but he certainly seems to be a player that, if he's your number one star striker, maybe perhaps needs to be on the pitch a little bit more.
Maybe I'll come in very briefly. I just think he just looks to have an absolutely great attitude, and he's another option who is a brilliant world-class finisher, and you'd rely on him more than, say, Martial and basically anyone else in a one-on-one situation. And I think, in fairness to Solskjaer, I think he's worked out to be a brilliant signing. I saw Ibrahimovic for Milan earlier this year. He's 5 or 6 years older than him. Cavani, to me, looks like he's plenty to offer. And Man United made drastic changes in the second half today, and it worked. And Cavani's goal against Everton again was just world-class striking, and I think the important thing is that he seems to have a real hunger to do well even at this stage of his life. I think he was a great sign.
So just to update people on the table then, as things currently stand, the action ongoing as well in the 3 o'clock games. Aston Villa 1, Crystal Palace 0, Bertrand Traoré with the goal. Fulham 0, Southampton 0 is still a latest score approaching half time in that game. Liverpool sitting top 14 games played, 31 points. Then it's Leicester in second with an extra game played, but 28 points they're on. United a further point behind Leicester, but of course with that game in hand to come. So things heating up nicely for the season. You're listening to OTB Football Saturday. It's myself, Shane Hannon, in the company of David Meyler, Johnny Ward and Shane Keegan. We're here until 5 o'clock this evening. You can text us to 53106 to get involved at any stage, or tweet us indeed at Off The Ball. An interesting story, lads, that caught my eye in the last day or two. Wolves manager Nuno Espirito Santo blocking their players going to the supermarket in a bid to reduce the risk of contracting coronavirus. But we had this discussion in the news round a little earlier on. David, surely Premier League footballers don't do their own shopping?
They will. I did my own shopping for years. I'm very fortunate that I'm married now with 2 children, so my wife is on top of everything. I've got to give her her props. She does everything. She gets everything organised. But yeah, look, if lads are single or whatever, you know, they've got no partner or no family near them, they'll have to do it themselves. So I can see the case, but nowadays you have, as my wife keeps reminding me, click and collect, so you can order online and they drop it off your front door. So to your sword. Loads of possibilities. But look, to answer your question, yes, lads will have to do their own, you know, shopping. There's times when I get sent down to the supermarket to get certain things because they're not in the house.
Lads, can I just pick up on a different topic here? So we kind of half mentioned it during the week, and it brought a few headlines. And Brexit is certainly not something that I figured we'd be talking about today, but as it pertains to football, and there were headlines this week, fears for the futures of Irish talent if these Brexit rulings are introduced. So British clubs are having to reassess essentially how they recruit players from the EU. So with football clubs have had to, I guess, under FIFA's rules, clubs can't sign a player from another country until they turn 18 years of age. There is an exemption, of course, though, for players who transfer between one EU country and another. And you know, between 30 and 50, I think it is, Irish players transfer and move across from Ireland to the UK every year. But Shane, I might just get your take on this. I don't know what your reaction is. Are Irish clubs and academies and that sort of thing set up to deal with this if I guess these players can't actually move across to the UK?
Yeah, I suppose my take on it naively, Shane, initially was that this is a good thing, because I'm looking at it from 2 points of view. One, I'm thinking, you know, how fantastic would it be to have our best 17-year-olds playing in the League of Ireland, Premier and First Division, rather than kicking around in development leagues over in England. And then the second one is, in terms of the mental health of a player and the chances of a player settling when they go across, I would have had fairly hands-on experience in this in terms of Mikey Drennan here in not too far away from me when he went to Aston Villa. Mikey struggled a hell of a lot when he went across there. He won't mind me saying that. And because I had a decent relationship both with Mikey and with the scout who had orchestrated, was involved in the move at the time, when Mikey would go into the office and say that he wanted to come home, that essentially he was packing it in and he'd had enough, it was kind of me that they phoned to either a couple of times have a chat with Mikey on the phone and try and get him to relax and give it another while, or on 2 occasions they actually brought me across to spend a bit of time with him. Now, in my naivety back then, Shane, like, I thought I was doing the right thing. You know, I thought this was a huge opportunity for the lad, and I needed to get him to understand how much of an opportunity it was for him, and, you know, to try and get him to knuckle down and just get on with it, and, you know, see could we find a bit more for him to do during the day and all that kind of thing. I mean, in the years that have passed since that, like, Mikey Drennan has spoken openly about contemplating suicide during all that experience. Like, imagine how I feel thinking back to what an idiot I was back then and how wrong my priorities were. And because of that experience, that has kind of brought me to a mindset where I'm looking at them going, you know, definitely, if they were 18, they were a bit more mature, you know, those two years would make a colossal difference, in my opinion. David obviously is a lot better place to be interested to hear on how he settled and the pitfalls of it over there. But I thought all of that was good. Now, Gavin Cooney had a fantastic article in 42 around the whole thing this week. He spoke to probably the most 2 prominent guys in underage development in the country, and Alan Caffrey and Will Clark. And both of those guys have essentially said that no, they don't think that Ireland is in a position yet where we're ready to take on that responsibility of the players' development over those extra 2 years. Again, I mightn't be getting their exact wording right there, but they're far better positioned than I am to make a judgment call on that. So, you know, there's going to be pros and cons for it, but in terms of the development of our players, if you're looking purely at players progressing through to an Irish international team and fulfilling their potential, they seem to think we're going to have a big problem over those 2 years.
Yeah, and you look at the likes of, in recent years, even Troy Parrott moving across, Caoimhín Kelleher, Adamida, Jason Knight, Aaron Connolly, Jason Malumbi, they've all gone cross channel in recent years. But Johnny, when you see players leaving the League of Ireland, as it were, or the smaller clubs in Ireland, even below the League of Ireland, do you feel happy for these players, or is there a tinge of sadness that maybe we can't hold on to them and I guess keep our best players over here?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, it's kind of what Shane said there would be essentially my thought process on it. I actually think it's a bit of a national scandal that we allowed a situation where the game was run so badly in this country that we basically, whilst our economy was absolutely booming, rugby was booming, and football was the best participation sport, we thought it was quite normal that players would just be shipped off to England, albeit to a far superior league. But like the repercussions of that, first of all, you're chasing a dream that's basically 100 to 1 shot. To get to the top level is extremely hard, regardless of what club you sign for. To get to reach a stage where you could play in one of the top 4 leagues in England is obviously quite achievable for a young prodigy. But like Jack Byrne has spoken about this, he was the best player in Ireland. He went over to Manchester City. He was just another player. And we sent players over, we sent kids over before they had matured as individuals, as a matter of course, and didn't really think very much about what happens, not only how homesick these players are likely to get and how that would actually affect their development as a player, but also the fact that if it doesn't work out and things aren't going well on the football pitch, when they do come back to Ireland, that they're basically somewhat on a mental scrap heap, and they don't think that they can fulfill the development, because everything for all these young players is basically, as Jack said, I'm the best player on this team, I'm the best player in the next team. Then you go to England and you're put into a big system where you're not necessarily that special player anymore. And I don't think Irish football here, I don't think we have the academy system built in yet, but I think we have to take this opportunity to start building, because we need to build a football industry in this country. We have very good players, we have very good coaches, and we have clubs that are established here a long time. We have an awful lot of money in this country. We need to now start working such that our kids stay in this country until they're 18, and then they can move on to other European clubs. And in fairness, there's one way of looking at it, and the players you mentioned there, Parrott and Kelleher, and the guys that have done well, but then you look at like Shamrock Rovers and Bohemians have given they've given Premier Division debuts to players very, very young this year, and players are able to develop maybe against kind of adult players in this country quicker than they would in England. So there are some positives to that as well, and I think we have to grasp this opportunity, but it will take government support as well, because it's a bit of a scandal that we've had for years and years and years. We've just exported our best players as kids, and many of them have come back in a very bad place.
David, I know you were probably a little bit more developed age-wise. I think you were maybe 19 or so, heading from Cork City over to Sunderland. Was there any element of homesickness for you, or even any other Irish lads you saw over there? Did anyone struggle around you, or even did you struggle yourself to kind of come to terms with this fully new life and culture in England?
Some very interesting points to the lads. I go back to myself. When I was 15 and 16, I was over to England all the time to various different football clubs. Nottingham Forest wanted to sign me as a 16-year-old. My mother and father felt it wasn't right for me to go, which I look back on, you kind of think at that time, a bit when Shane is talking about Mikey there, it's kind of all you ever wanted. It's all I ever wanted, and you feel the opportunity's almost gone. But my dad always had this thing, if you're good enough, you're good enough. So I kind of respected it and kind of said, right, I'll crack on. I was lucky I was playing at that time. My father's always made great, calls in my career. So I'm very grateful for that. But I left College Corinthians, who would have been my schoolboy team, who were very successful. We had won everything growing up. And I left to join Cove Ramblers, which I played under 15, 16, 17 and 18 at the time. So I was playing in 4 games a weekend, Saturday 10 o'clock, Saturday 2 o'clock, Sunday 10 o'clock. Sunday 2 o'clock. And I actually got to play at 15 against 18-year-old, which was the first, stepping stone of my career the kind of, like, you know, when Johnny talks about playing against grown men, I was playing against 18-year-olds who were, you know, they were full-grown teenagers at that point. And then I started training with Cove Ramblers first team. And then eventually Paul Bowdrin came and said to me, I want you to sign for Cork City. And I went in, and lo and behold, I started playing then, you know, with Paul Bowdrin with the Cork City under-18s, and then the 21s was Dewey Ashton, and then I got in training with Damien Richardson. So at that age, at 17, 18, I was playing, you know, with grown men. And I'll never forget when I got in training with Cork City's first team, you know, the midfielders were Colin Healy, Joe Gamble, you know, who were two Irish internationals, you know, both have played in England. It was great to learn off the two of them. But I had a very good learning basis at that age of 17, 18, being able to learn off those, so that when the opportunity did come to sign for Sunderland, I was ready. You know, you speak about, did I get homesick? Look, of course, I missed my mates or whatever. I missed my family, but I'll never forget when I went over to sign a contract. I've spoken about it in the past on Off the Ball, that my dad said, this is it. There's no home for you. You can't come home. This is all you've ever wanted. So don't be turning up here in a month, in 2 months' time saying, oh, Dad, he said, this is it. This is all you've ever wanted. I don't want any excuses. And I signed in July, and I didn't go home. The first time I went home was I got a week off at Christmas. And I'd say after 3 days at home, look, I celebrated with my friends Christmas or whatever, but I was itching to get back to England, because I was kind of like, I kind of formed this new life. I was in this new bubble, and even now I'm over in England, 12 and a half years, and people say, oh, would I move back to Ireland? And I said, kind of, my life is over here, and I'm on the path of becoming a coach. It's something I'm desperate to do, and if I go back to Ireland, then I'm going to be chasing the dream of getting back to, manage or coach in the Premier League, because that's what I want to do. So it is, look, it's tough for all different things. It was just, at 18, I was definitely a lot older and a lot more mature to really understand where I was at. I'd lived at home where my mother and father had done everything for me growing up, and then you move to Sunderland. I move in, I have to find an apartment, and it's like I'm ringing my mum saying, what do I need? And she said, well, you need furniture, you need bedding, you need food put in the fridge. I'd never cooked, never done anything, never washed my clothes, never ironed my clothes. I had to learn it all. My wife now thinks that I don't know how to do anything, even though I kind of play stupid to her at times. But it was definitely learning curve, but something I relished. I relished the challenge, because I was at an age where this is all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff there, lads. We'll need to take an ad break, but we can pick up on that after for sure. But just to give you the half-time scores: Aston Villa 1, Crystal Palace 0 at Villa Park, and Fulham 0, Southampton 0 at Craven Cottage are the Premier League scores as things stand. But don't go anywhere. It's OTB Football Saturday. You're listening to David Meyler there, the former Republic of Ireland international, and Sunderland, Hull City, and various other clubs footballer. You've got Shane Keegan, who's a coach with Dundalk FC, of course, and Johnny Ward, the broadcaster and journalist. So we'll pick up with the lads after the ads. We might even do a quiz of Football 2020, so don't get too nervous, lads, but you'll only be on live national radio doing a very mini quiz. No prizes, but sure, I guess bragging rights are enough. But loads to come. We might talk a bit about Arsenal as well. I know they're playing Chelsea this evening. The pressure's on Mikel Arteta as well. So it's OTB Football Saturday, and we'll be back after this.
The Snowman or a Muppets Christmas Carol?
A Muppets Christmas Carol.
Oh, Muppets Christmas Carol.
A Muppets Christmas Carol.
Muppets Christmas Carol. I watch it about 4 times a year, even when it's not Christmas.
Merry Christmas from News Talk.
The Power City sale is now on. Get instant cash back on our huge range of LG, Sony, Samsung and Panasonic TVs. For more information, go online to powercity.ie.
QuoteDevil.ie can save you money on your car insurance, van insurance or home insurance. Quote Devil Home Insurance is so easy. Get a quote in just 60 seconds and purchase cover in 3 minutes.
The Quote Devil's always got one hell of a quote.
Quote Devil Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
This Christmas, get all the non-stop Premier League action with a Now TV, Sky Sports or Sports Extra pack. Watch over 40 games this December with the biggest names in the league.
Gets it from Fernandes.
Stream every game or only pay for the ones you want. Your sport on your terms with Now TV. 18 plus ROI only. Month passes sold separately and auto-renew. Minimum speed 2.5 megabits per second. Terms apply.
They said it couldn't be done. A marketing tool so immediate, your message can reach the nation at the speed of sound. Okay, look, it's radio. Yes, radio. And because it's so simple to make, you can write your brilliant ad today, record it in the morning,
Take one.
and be on air by tea time. And don't worry, you can still sound fancy.
Notions.
Radio. We let people know your business.
Find out more at newstalk.com/advertising.
The Power City sale is now on. Get instant cash back on our huge range of LG, Sony, Samsung and Panasonic TVs. For more information, go online to powercity.ie.
It's so important to make someone happy.
This year, on average, €4.6 million was raised every week for National Lottery good causes by you, our players.
And you will be happy too.
So thank you from the National Lottery.
And on the News Talk app. This is News Talk.
It's 4 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Burke. 1,296 more people have tested positive for COVID-19 here, and 6 more patients with the virus have died. The Chief Medical Officer says we have now returned to the very high levels of COVID-19 circulating in the community, which we haven't seen since the peak of the second wave of the disease. Dr. Tony Holohan's described it as very concerning. Today's latest death confirmations bring the total death toll in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, to 2,200. Meanwhile, the HSE is storing the first consignment of the Pfizer vaccine at a secret warehouse after taking delivery this morning. Medics will give the first injections 4 days from now. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says there are enough for everyone.
Very soon we will have more vaccines once they are proven to be safe and effective. And the European Union has secured enough doses of vaccines for our whole population of 450 million people. But we also secured vaccines for our neighbours like Iceland or Norway.
Scrutiny of the post-Brexit trade deal has begun after European officials posted the 1,200-page document online this morning. Boris Johnson calls it the basis of a stable partnership for years to come. A last-minute Christmas Eve intervention has saved the drive-in pantomime at Malahide Castle in Dublin from cancellation. Organisers had feared the latest public health controls would stop them staging Peter Pan on the big screen. Panto producer Alan Hughes says there's still an option for families outside Dublin with tickets.
If you can't travel because you're outside Dublin, you will be offered a full refund or the fact of a partial refund, and then be able to stream it live into your home as well. So you don't have to miss the magic of Peter Pan.
Federal agents are flooding into Nashville, Tennessee to examine the scene of the massive Christmas morning blast there. 3 people are in a stable condition in hospital after a camper van rigged with explosives went off in the city centre. FBI Special Agent Matt Foster says the Bureau has devoted all available resources to help with the probe.
The FBI stands with the city of Nashville today in this very tragic Christmas Day event. This is our city too. We live here, we work here. And we're putting everything we have into finding who was responsible for what's happened here.
It's 2 minutes past 4.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to the AA. Download the new AA app to request a roadside rescue and track the patrol right to your car.
Heavy rain in the northwest will move over the country as the winds rise. Storm Bella is bringing gusts of up to 110 kilometres per hour, with the strongest hitting the west and southwest tonight. There's a gale warning and the risk of coastal flooding on the west coast. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Yes, indeed. You are very welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. Shane Hannon with you until 5 p.m. this evening. You can get in touch with us at any stage on text to 53106. Tweet us at Off the Ball. Tweet myself at Shane Hannon01 if you like. You can also listen in on the OTB Sports app. We're listening to OTB Football Saturday in association with Paddy Power as always. Please remember to gamble responsibly, and for more information visit dunlewy.net. Delighted to still be joined by the former Republic of Ireland captain David Meyler, the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward, and indeed the Dundalk FC coach Shane Keegan. We'll just bring you the half-time from the Premier League. So Villa Park was where Aston Villa were hosting Crystal Palace, and watching that first half there was Clive Edwards.
Aston Villa 1, Crystal Palace 0. The goal scored by Traore in the 4th minute. It's been a fast-paced game, sometimes bad-tempered, and in fact one of the Villa players has been sent off just on the stroke of half-time. It was Tyrone Mings who got into something of a tussle with Zaha, and the referee has given the red to Mings, so Villa will be playing the second half with just 10 men. They're a goal up. It's Villa 1, Palace 0.
Yeah, still scoreless in the other Premier League game that kicked off at 3 o'clock. That was Fulham against Southampton. So half-time at Craven Cottage. Still remains 0-0. Arsenal-Chelsea is a 5:30 kick-off this evening, and then at 8 p.m. Manchester City versus Newcastle, and you have Sheffield United against Everton. Meanwhile, in the Scottish Premiership, bad news for Celtic fans. Rangers went 19 points clear at the top of the table earlier. They beat third-placed Hibs at Ibrox by 1-0. So you'd wonder for Celtic at the moment how they're going to claw that lead back, especially with games running out. Celtic currently 0-0 with Hamilton Academical in their game in the Scottish Premiership today. And we should mention racing with Johnny Ward on the line with us as well. The Christmas festival is getting underway at both Leopardstown and Limerick today. The Willie Mullins trained Franco de Port, ridden by Brian Cooper, won the feature at Leopardstown. That was the novice chase, while the big race at Limerick, the novice steeplechase, was won by another Willie Mullins trained horse. Colreevy was guided home there by his nephew Danny Mullins, while across the water the King George VI chase at Kempton was won by the 20-1 outsider Frodon. The result marks a 12th win in the race for trainer Paul Nichols. Johnny, just while you're with us, I guess the Stephen's Day is quite often a big day for racing, but has COVID played havoc with the quality of the field? Has the horses on show because of travel limitations and that sort of thing been affected much?
Not really, Shane, actually, and like a couple of horses would have been due to run sort of in Kempton today that would have gone over from Ireland, and that was then ruled out a few days ago. So Monaghan would have been the obvious kind of notable absentee there. But we've had disappointing enough number of Irish kind of, I suppose, of British horses coming over to Ireland for the Christmas festival, because Cheltenham's such a big deal that we don't get as many British horses over as I'd like. So Champ was going to come over, but Nicky Henderson, as is his wont, he rather bottled it, and he didn't bring him over, and then it was kind of pretty much that he wouldn't have been able to come over anyway. So it actually has had very little effect on the quality of the fields. That's no consolation to punters, who basically nearly all lost money today. It was an absolute bloodbath.
You're listening to the voice of Johnny Ward there speaking to us. We have David Meyler as well on the line, and Shane Keegan. David, we were talking before the news there about Brexit and the impact of young players heading over from Ireland to England, but and you referenced your own career as well, and heading over to England as a youngster. But I guess on the other end of your career then, I know a lot of players, or not a lot, but certain players come back and I guess finish their careers with their local club, or maybe a League of Ireland club they started off with. Was there ever a temptation? I mean, we had a text in here from Darren Smith from Monaghan. He's driving down to Limerick today, but he's asking, can you ask David, did he ever consider a return to play in the League of Ireland? Would he encourage young lads to stay playing League in Ireland before heading across the water as well?
I would encourage fellas to play League of Ireland before they go across. Like I was just talking to my dad there about, during the ad break, and we're kind of talking about, it's when you go over at 16, it's so difficult, because I look at it, in my mind anyway, I look at it, you're inevitably trying to get to the first team. How long is it going to get, is it going to take me to get to the first team? When you go over at 16, they'll pick up on every small little fault and try and develop you into a better player over time. And if you don't adjust and get better with time, you kind of get left by the wayside. That's probably what happens to a lot of young lads that go over. But when you go over at 18, 19, you inevitably should be a year, 18 months away from the first team if your mindset is correct. So they'll kind of know what you're signing. But going back to your first kind of part of the question, look, I didn't want to retire when I retired. It would have been great to play another few years in England, and then, probably have a final hoorah at Cork City. There was talks of me going to Dundalk. I never had concrete information. Shame I know more. But these things pop up everywhere. With little transfers, you hear different rumours, but I wouldn't have. If I was going to come home to play, I'd have probably gone and wanted to play for Cork City. Just on this, lads, and I guess it's a separate story, but that one that came up this week and was fairly abysmal and horrific to read as well. But Shamrock Rovers hitting out at hurtful and hateful abuse aimed at their players during an online streaming of a match. So it was an under-17 national boys and women's finals, and I guess it's around the issue of online abuse generally. Which unfortunately is far too common. But Rovers releasing a statement as well today. They're saying they're offering their full support to their under-17 women's squad and their families following sexist comments being posted during their league decider against Cork midweek. The Dublin club also condemning racist posts which were made on the page hosting the broadcast of the under-17 boys final. And the FAI saying the comments are, quote, not acceptable in any circumstance, and they're committed to closely monitor comments on streams in the future. So, I mean, I'm just reading the
the Shamrock Rovers statement on their website today, and they're saying, of course, they're extremely proud of their under-17 women's team and management, who in their first season made it all the way to the league final. All of the girls are eligible for under-17 football next year, and they're paying tribute to these players, talking about the 20 by 20 vision as well. If she can't see it, she can't be it. And really just abysmal, hurtful, horrific, needless stuff. And I know, Johnny, you had some thoughts on this as well. It's something that really none of us want to see at any stage.
No, and it's a bit like the Luke Kelly statue, just getting all that kind of massive publicity about the damage done to Luke Kelly's statue. It kind of pains me to even talk about this, because like the online world has been amazing in so many ways. It's changed the way we live, and it's opened up possibilities for kind of free speech and all that. But the flip side of it is you get these absolute imbeciles who are probably about as brave as an absolute coward, because they wouldn't do any of this to your face, yet they can go online possibly under whatever name it is and make these comments about either racist comments about a male footballer or horrible sexist comments about a girl. And I spoke about this recently. I think the coverage of ladies sport in general has just gone through the roof in recent years, and I think it's going to explode over the next 10 or 20 years. I think the whole issue of gender as kids, I certainly think girls are going to play sport and play sport for a lot longer, and the quality of elite female sport is going to just explode, because I think it just needs you need a couple of decades of young players playing and it becoming more normal to play and to keep playing, because a lot of girls obviously fall off. And you see the coverage now around the ladies All-Ireland finals in hurling and football, and you see the coverage around the Irish national teams, the international team, and their recent game against Germany, and the amount of coverage that got. But the flip side is you do have that element still of rampant sexism. And I suppose the thing for me, Shane, is I don't know what to do with something like this, because this issue was brought to the fore by one of the girls, but you're kind of advertising to these imbeciles, and you're kind of giving them the oxygen that they need, because I don't know what they're going to ever do with the internet in terms of policing it, because you can't police it. And it's sad that this issue is being brought up, because it's given oxygen to these absolute morons who have nothing better to do than hide behind a keyboard and give out about somebody who's achieved more in life than he ever will.
Yeah, and I think I guess the issue massively, and abuse online is not good in any instance, but especially when it's targeted towards an underage person, and it's an underage footballer who for the love of the game is taking part in this game. And we want more girls to get involved in football, and that's the purpose of 20 by 20. And when they see comments like this on social media, it can't help. And I just hope that those Shamrock Rovers players, underage players, both the boys team and the girls team, aren't put off by this, and that they keep going with the football. I mean, even if we park that particular issue and as abysmal and horrific and all that it is, I mean, even for yourself, David, like someone in the public eye, I guess, puts themselves out there. I mean, even just looking at your Twitter here, you've got over 205,000 followers on Twitter. By the law of averages, not all of those people are going to be pleasant Mary Poppins individuals. They're not going to be all very nice. I mean, have you had any incidents of, I guess, hurtful things said on social media? I mean, it seems to be becoming more common these days.
Yeah, and it's a massive problem. You're talking there about the young girls at Shamrock Rovers playing, and they're having to experience this, which is wrong. I don't know what to do about it. You talk of my own experiences. Yeah, I've had different things where I've been abused. Yeah, I go back to my first red card in the Premier League. I think you might have seen it there recently. It popped up in a video. I have the 5th fastest red card in Premier League history. I took an awful lot of dogs abuse after that, which was, some of it was called for, some was uncalled for. But I've had people speak about my daughter on social media. If you post a photo of my family or whatever, I've had people come after my child. It can be a horrible place. And as Johnny said, the worst thing is it's some 12 or 13-year-old gobshite who's sitting behind a keyboard and mouse, or they're on their phone, and there has to be some responsibility for their actions. If it comes from Twitter or Instagram or whatever, that they should have to verify. Every account should be verified in the sense of email address, passports. If you want to be on social media, there has to be some way that you can be held accountable. It's not nice, and I've seen it happen to lads I've played with, people I haven't played with, and it does take effect on people's mental health. And as you're talking there, Shane, about you just hope that these young boys and girls want to continue playing, because it will have psychologically affected others than it will have. So it is a problem, but I don't know what to do. I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. And even Shane, from your perspective, and I'm sure League of Ireland clubs and other organisations and GA and rugby and stuff in Ireland, they have proper protocols in place when it comes to social media abuse and reporting it and that sort of thing. Is it something, even in Dundalk, without naming names of players, is it something that players are quite open with coming forward? You know, if they get something that's completely unacceptable on social media, that there is that avenue and there is that ability for players to open up and talk to whoever that person in the club, the liaison officer, whoever it might be, that streamline is there for them to have these conversations.
Yeah, look, I do think it's something clubs in general are getting better at. We have had an incident recently at Dundalk with Nathan Adoa. Nathan missed a penalty in one of our European games and suffered quite a bit of a backlash on social media. Some of it directed at his race and that kind of stuff. And the club were very, very quick in acting and making sure that they got behind him and kind of, you know, let it known in known terms how unacceptable this kind of behaviour was. I mean, just going back to the particular incident that you were talking about, the first thing I would do is I would give massive kudos to young Jesse Stapleton for raising this as a point. What happened the other night, it's not an easy thing for her to do. It would be much easier just to keep her mouth shut and say nothing. I think she's done a brilliant job in the way, even how she has used social media to screen grab it and put those comments together and raise the awareness of it. She's done an absolutely tremendous job. So well done to her first and foremost. Like I suppose out of trying to understand, like, these were actual people who had their names assigned to their comments. They weren't even fake accounts, like, and you're kind of to try and understand where does this sort of stuff come from. You can actually look up these guys. You will find these people on Twitter and on Facebook. I did it, to be honest with you, before the show started. And look, like, without getting too personal, I mean, these are just sad people with absolutely nothing going on in their lives, and their only way of getting a kick out of anything is to fire this kind of abuse out there. But at the same time, I don't think anybody should be surprised about it. You know, the world might be progressing in various different ways, but anybody who thinks that lad culture is dead and buried is grossly mistaken. So they are. And yeah, look, it's not for everybody. I initially went on Twitter a good few years back, and following our second leg relegation against Drogheda back in 2016 with Wexford, I attracted a particular cohort of football fans who I think had a gripe about me bringing Lee Chin into the Wexford scenario so late in the day, and then the whole thing that played out with him and the All-Stars. They got tremendous satisfaction over us getting relegated at that time anyway. And yeah, I took absolute dogs abuse at the time on Twitter, and I closed down the account, to be honest with you. I had to close down the account. I wouldn't regard myself as being too soft in that perspective, but it just got a bit too much, and I just closed it down at the time. Now, obviously, a couple of years later, when I was out of football again and started to do bits and bobs of media, you see the benefits of it from a media perspective, and I started up a new one, and that's the one I operate off now. And look, you'll get the odd comment here and there, but yeah, look, it's just part and parcel of the social media world, unfortunately, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course we wish all of those Shamrock Rovers underage players all the best, and hopefully it doesn't affect them too much, as we said, and those that left the comments are brought to justice. Just to stick on the League of Ireland just for a second, lads, and Shane, this is something that we kind of spoke to Vinnie Perth about on Off the Ball quite recently. You know, you see players leaving the club, the likes of Sean Gannon and Sean Hoare, leaving to join Shamrock Rovers, and you know, Vinnie said to us, it's heartbreaking for me to see Sean Gannon in a Shamrock Rovers jersey. And as a former Dundalk manager, you can understand him saying that. Gary Rogers retiring, you know, I think Aaron McCary is off to Cliftonville as well, the substitute keeper. So what did you make of Vinnie's comments, and I guess the exodus, and I assume there's an incoming influx of players to come into the club as well?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing I'd say is I thought Vinnie was very, very good on the show. So he was. I thought his comments around being out of a job and the search for another job and all that, I found that particularly really, really interesting. He was very, very good on that front. But yeah, I mean, in terms of his Sean Gannon comment, I completely get where he's coming from there. I've kind of only been at the club now for 1 year, and even the first half of that year I was a very peripheral role. It's only really been the second half, and even after 6 months, you can't but love Sean Gannon. He's with that particular kind of type of personality, so he is. But yeah, look, an awful lot of change up at the club at the moment, that's for sure. A lot of bodies out. I think Filippo himself has said that, you know, they're not there are a couple that we've lost that we certainly would have preferred to retain, all right. But I think the model at Dundalk is very, very different over the last 12 months than previously. And I think, again, Filippo has already spoken about the fact that I think there'll be a couple of players coming in from outside of the league that I think will strengthen the team up tremendously. I mean, you look at the starting lineup from the FAI Cup final, and you've actually only lost Sean Gannon and Gary Rogers from that team. So it's not like the place is falling apart up there either. You still have the mainstay of a hugely successful unit. But we need reinforcements, that's for sure. But yeah, look, I think they're on the way, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, if they are players from outside of this league. It'll be really, really interesting to see how players from other countries acclimatise to this league.
When we're looking back on 2020, and I guess we have to do that today, given that it's the last Saturday of the year, but how do you assess now Dundalk's Europa League adventure? I'm sure it was quite an experience for yourself, even to be, you know, sharing touchlines with the likes of Mikel Arteta and very recognisable faces, and to be playing at a level like that for an Irish club, and it doesn't happen too often, as we've seen. You know, Dundalk and Rovers have done it, but quite a special experience you had this year with Dundalk, Shane.
Yeah, look, a mad year for me personally anyway, Shane, that's for sure. I think it was roughly this day last year that Vinnie Pert initially contacted me and asked me to meet him in a cafe up in Newbridge for a chat, which I did the following day. So I think, yeah, he contacted me on the 26th. We met on the 27th. So yeah, it played out as a crazy year. Everybody's had a crazy year, but had a particular brand of crazy year, I suppose. But of course it was incredibly enjoyable, really enjoyable, even in the frustrating parts of it where league wasn't going as well, or obviously Europe was a fantastic adventure, but not to get any points from it was something that grates with the lads. But to finish it on the high that we did with the FAI Cup final was huge, because otherwise it is a bit of a write-off of the season, let's be completely honest about it. But the fact that there was, you know, very few given any chance going into the FAI Cup final, except for Johnny, of course, who fancied us to pull off a bit of a shot on the day, didn't you, Johnny? But
predicted the draw.
Yeah, you did. But no, look, it was crazy. It was crazy for the players. I think it's a tremendous learning experience playing those European games, Shane. It really is. You look at the likes of Dara Leahy or some of the younger fellas like that, and that sort of experience, and coming up against me. And Dara Leahy, you know, he's marking Pepe. He's 21. He's 21 years of age, and he's marking Pepe in a European League game. You know, whether things did go quite well for him on the night, to be fair. But you know, regardless of how things go for you on the night, you're going to be. You can't but learn. You can't but learn from experiences like that. And you look at Chris Shields' performance, say against Rapid Vienna, which was, to my mind, one of the outstanding European performances. Very, very David Meyler like, if I'd say, almost in terms of a lot better than that now. In the way he played on the night. But I mean, Shields would be a guy, you know, there's more than him, so there is, but he would be a guy, to my mind, who absolutely has to be coming into consideration for a cap or for an appearance under Stephen Kenny. So for him to be able to, you know, it's all well and good to be proving yourself in a local League of Ireland game, but for him to go and be the outstanding player on the pitch against Rapid Vienna in a game like that, I mean, eventually it was UC Demir who eventually kind of was the only one who managed to skip away from him for that third goal, I think it was. I'm reading in the papers this week that it's a battle between Manchester United and Barcelona as to who's going to sign UC Demir. You know, he is that talented. He is an absolutely class act. He's a wonder kid from that direction. You know, to get the experience of taking on fellas like that, you know, with the best will in the world to the League of Ireland. In fairness, I suppose, if you can handle Jack Byrne, you can probably handle UC Demir or a lot of quality players. So you can. But no, a fantastic experience all around for the players, that's for sure.
Johnny, just I know you're a proper League of Ireland man, as they say, and a man who goes to a lot of League of Ireland matches and covers them. What's your take on the current state of the League of Ireland as we approach the end of 2020 and we look back on the year where Dundalk were in that Europa League group stage? Shamrock Rovers were mightily impressive throughout the domestic campaign as well. When you look at the current state of the League of Ireland, where does it sit in your mind now? Are you optimistic about the next couple of years in the League of Ireland?
Yeah, like, I mean, Shane was kind of having a bit of crack at me there, because I did make a point that I thought Shamrock Rovers would have done better in the group than Dundalk, but that wasn't because I think Dundalk didn't have a great year all in all, and I think it's so much upheaval that as much as 2016 was misleading, what Dundalk achieved that year and what Shamrock Rovers kind of achieved, and other clubs as well, against good opposition in Europe, even Bows against Ferrovar from Hungary this year. I think there's massive talent in this country. I really do. And I think when we put clubs together in Europe, we're capable of very good results, and there's a problem in this league in terms of goal scorers, and that's reflected in the international team as well. We've obviously scored 1 goal in 8 games. St Patrick's Athletic have they've signed Ronan Coughlin. That would have been considered a coup, but Ronan Coughlin's goal scoring record is not good at all, and yet he was considered a coup. And I think that's kind of symptomatic of the league where we're at, because we've some really good players, but goals are a problem. And incidentally, I think Colin will actually do very well at St Pat's, but I think we've proper talent in this country. Shane mentioned Darragh Leahy there. Darragh Leahy wasn't assured of his place all the time at Dundalk. Danny Mandu, a player of outrageous ability and would hold his own in any Ireland under-21 session, generally didn't really play for Bohemians this season because they had the likes of Dawson Devoy and they had Keith Ward, who was outstanding in Europe against really good opposition. Shamrock Rovers, obviously I thought they performed really well against AC Milan, created chances against a team of that nature, and you have other teams coming up. Watford played some terrific football this season, and it's the amount of young players we have coming through with 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds making their debuts in the League of Ireland this year. I think we've terrific coaches. I think there's improvements are made year in, year out at underage level, and I think as much as we talk about players going over to England, I think you have to get players young and get them playing at a young age. I think Shamrock Rovers under-9 team now is probably playing really good football, and I'm speculating here, but I think that's the way we're going. Next year is going to be terrific. The obvious elephant in the room, Shane, is that there's still so much doubt about the league next season in terms of a sponsor, in terms of the structure of the league, in terms of crowds being at games. The FAI is obviously had to be bailed out, and it's against that backdrop of an administrative kind of mess that the League of Ireland has had to prosper. But it has I think it has done very well in terms of the lack of money in the game, and I just make this point over and over. When I go to League of Ireland games now, I'm nearly guaranteed to enjoy myself. I enjoy this quality of the football. I enjoy the way teams play. Nearly all teams are getting the ball down. I think there's been a sea change in terms of the attitude towards the League of Ireland. Dundalk to score twice against Arsenal, scored terrific goals in Europe. I think people can recognise the progress is being made, and I think hopefully in 15 or 20 years' time, this will be a real league to be reckoned with, and hopefully we'll push closer to the Scandinavian kind of leagues, because I think that's where we should be aiming at, to be as good as the likes of Norway or Denmark in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed. I should mention as well, Gavin Cooney reporting in the 42 as well today, the FAI submitting 2 different capacity scenarios for the Aviva Stadium to UEFA in this bid to host 4 Euro 2020 games as expected. So hopefully the decision to be made by March, but UEFA asking all 12 host cities of the competition to work with their local health authorities. So I guess we'll have to wait and see as the vaccine becomes rolled out. We had the good news that Pfizer's vaccine is in the country today, so at least that was a positive for now. But David, if we look back at 2020 from an international football perspective for the Republic of Ireland, we had the Mick McCarthy to Stephen Kenny switch over when the pandemic hit a little bit earlier than expected. How do you see Stephen Kenny's first number of months in charge? We had the disappointment against Slovakia. We didn't exactly score too many goals. We can't really hit the back of the net too easily. But how would you assess Stephen Kenny's first number of months in charge?
Well, it's been certainly a learning probably process for Stephen, in the sense of coming in, going in, and then look, he's had so much to deal with COVID, the whole malarkey. Remember with Aaron Connolly sitting too close to someone on the plane, all that. He's had a lot to deal with. I don't think Stephen will be judged until the World Cup qualifiers come around. I think he'll look back and it'll certainly be a learning, process for him. He's brought in a lot of young, exciting players that people, have high hopes for. With obviously Jason Knight, Jason Malumbi, fellas like that. Darragh O'Shea's been a great inclusion. So it was difficult for him, but it's definitely, this will be his 4th camp once he comes in, for the World Cup qualifiers. So certainly he'll be looking to get results. Of course, he needs to address the situation of not scoring goals. You're hoping then kind of, all these lads who've been playing, Aaron Connolly, Adam Ida, Troy Parrott, those fellas will probably get another 10 to 15 games under their belts. So I think that was a massive concern the last time I was on, just after an international camp. The lads hadn't played a lot of football, so that once these games come around, you want lads playing 15 to 20, 25 games, so that Stephen has tough decisions to make, because lads are playing regular football and they're in good form. So I don't think we could judge him too much. Obviously, it's a big transition. He's kind of tried to change the identity and the style, and we do look to play a bit more possession. The kind of game I kind of go back to would be the England one. Was certainly an eye-opener that they left us play, and at times we need to, and I've no doubt that Stephen will have looked back on all the games, reflected on them all, but just to identify certain times when we can play and when we can't. I think against England would be the one where we just consistently tried to play. But at times as well, there's been very unlucky moments. If you remember, I think it was back to the Slovakia game, Conor Howland has a great chance. He knows he's got to score. He'll be, kicking himself looking back on that. But there's been, there's been some positive stuff. But I think it will really start for Stephen when the World Cup qualifiers come.
Just want to bring you news of a goal at Villa Park in one of the 3 o'clock Premier League kickoffs. It's Aston Villa against Crystal Palace, and watching that game at Villa Park is Clive Edwards.
It's Aston Villa 2, Crystal Palace 0, so 10-man Aston Villa extend their lead. This one scored by Courtney Hawes. It was a header by Ollie Watkins from about 6 yards out, which went over the keeper's head but off the crossbar. Hawes followed up and he headed into the back of the net. Palace trailing despite being a man up. It's Aston Villa 2, Crystal Palace 0.
Yeah, the other 3 o'clock kickoff in the Premier League this afternoon was at Craven Cottage. It's Fulham 0, Southampton 0 still in that game. 72 minutes played in that game at Craven Cottage. And from an Irish perspective, Shane Long starting up front for Southampton in that game, but remains scoreless so far. Leicester City 2, Manchester United 2 was a result earlier on at the King Power Stadium. That was the 12:30 kickoff. Still to come at 5:30, you have Arsenal against Chelsea at the Emirates. And then 2 games at 8 o'clock, Manchester City taking on Newcastle, and it's Sheffield United against Everton. I should mention in the Scottish Premiership as well, it's Hamilton 0, Celtic 2. Alton Edouard gave Celtic the lead with a penalty in the 49th minute before Lee Griffiths doubled the lead after 54 minutes. Rangers had won earlier on by a goal to 0. Which moved them 19 points clear at the top of the table. So if Celtic can hold on, they've cut that back to 16 with a couple of games in hand. So at least they'll regain some ground on Rangers after Rangers win a little earlier on. We have to take an ad break, but it's OTB Football Saturday. You're listening to myself, Shane Hannon, in conversation with David Meyler, the former Irish captain, Johnny Ward, the broadcaster and journalist, and Dundalk FC coach Shane Keegan. We'll be back in a moment.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Moncrief.
One of my daughters, she's 18 now. But when she was about 4, I by chance found an old videotape of me on the telly. So I thought, she's 4, she understands television, she might be a bit impressed with this. So I slapped on the videotape. And I thought she'd last 20 seconds, but she was entranced. She watched it for a good 10 minutes. And I thought, wow, she's really enjoying this. She's kind of impressed, Dad's been on the telly. And then she looked at me with these huge eyes and said, "You had hair."
Moncrief.
With the all-new Dacia Duster.
Weekdays from 2 p.m.
Thanks.
On News Talk.
The Power City sale is now on. Get instant cash back on our huge range of LG, Sony, Samsung and Panasonic TVs. For more information, go online to powercity.ie.
You know that feeling you get when you sense a team's winning streak is about to end? Or when you know the pundits are getting it all wrong? That feeling? That's me. I'm your hunch. I was there back in Istanbul when you just knew the comeback was on. I'm the guy that tells you when the odds don't look so odd. I'm your hunch. It's time to start listening.
Heed your hunch with Betway. Download the app to find out more about Betway's Bet Club. Full terms apply. 18 plus Dunlewy.net. Bet the responsible way.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Hey, very welcome back to OTB Football Saturday. It's myself, Shane Hannon, with you for the next little while until 5 o'clock. David Meyler, Johnny Ward and Shane Keegan are with me as well. We're here in association, as always, with Paddy Power. Please remember to gamble responsibly, and for more information visit dunlewy.net. You can get in touch with us as well on the text line. That's 53106. You can tweet us at Off The Ball. You can tweet myself at ShaneHannon01, and we'll try and get your comment read out on air on this Stephen's Day OTB Football Saturday. Lads, I don't know if you've been keeping very close track of the football this year, but we have a small quiz to bring you now. Like, I didn't concoct this quiz. This was, so you have to be honest if you've done, have you done the athletic football quiz of 2020 so far online? It's been online.
No, definitely not.
I haven't.
No, and I know I'm going to absolutely bomb at this as well.
Johnny, that was a very tentative no there. You're sure you haven't seen this quiz yet? Full credit to the athletic. This is not me, by the way.
It'll soon become apparent, Shane, that I haven't.
Okay, we'll only do a few rounds. There was 50 questions. We won't get through 50 questions now, but we don't want to embarrass you. They're going to be multiple choice as well. And I think we have some tense music as well that we can play in the background, which is perhaps going to add to the occasion here. I think it's the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire music, perhaps, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, there it is. Wow. Turn that up a wee bit, Quilly, just so we can all hear it. That is... Whoa. Are you nervous, lads?
If I get 15 right, I won £1 million.
I kind of feel like Father Ted when he was at Hope real name was, you know.
Okay, we're gonna start alphabetically here. So that would be a K for Keegan. That would be Shane Keegan first. So, Shane, we're gonna start with you. Question 1. And if you're listening in at home, if you're driving at home, test yourself. Try it. See what you remember about football in 2020. This is the Athletic UK Football Quiz of 2020. I did not make these questions. Do not give out to me if you don't like the questions. And if they're a little bit hard, it's because it's a football quiz and it's, you know, it's not an easy one. So Shane Keegan, question 1, the global game. The final of which of these competitions is yet to be played, having been delayed because of COVID-19? Is it the Women's FA Cup, Coppa del Rey, Coppa Italia, or European Super Cup?
Shane, am I allowed to phone a friend?
Is your friend one of the lads?
Absolute complete stab in the dark. We'll go Coppa Italia.
It's not Coppa Italia. It's the Coppa del Rey. The final will be played in April. That's a tough question, Shane. I have to give it to you. That's not easy. That is not easy.
Not a clue. Shane.
Shane knows about as much as Lana Del Rey as the Coppa del Rey.
Good, great singer, to be fair.
She certainly isn't.
David, matter of opinion, Johnny. David Meyler, you're next up. Who won the Portuguese top flight this year? Was it Benfica, Porto, Sporting, or Braga?
Sporting.
It was FC Porto. I'm sorry. Johnny, that means you have a chance to take an early lead here after the first round. I have to say this question is probably slightly easier than the two lads. Johnny, who headed home Bayern Munich's winner in the Champions League final? Was it Ivan Perisic, Serge Gnabry, Thomas Muller, or Kingsley Coman?
It was Muller, what I recall.
It's Kingsley Coman. The tech ops laughing in the background where everybody's laughing. I hope people are laughing at home as well. That was abysmal, lads.
That was terrible.
It was a tough first round, to be fair now.
Good start for your 3 football experts.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we'll rifle.
I'm not an expert.
So next question for you, Shane. Which of these sides won the most points in last season's Women's Super League but lost the title on points per game? Chelsea, Arsenal, Everton, or Manchester City? That is tough.
Arsenal.
It's Chelsea or Man City.
It was Man City.
Yeah.
It was Man City.
Nah, not a clue.
That's a tough one. Next one for you, David. Which forward won the European Golden Shoe, scoring 36 times? Was it Ciro Immobile, Lionel Messi, Robert Lewandowski, or Erling Haaland?
You'd be drawn straight away to Lewandowski, but I think it's Immobile.
Correct. Correct, David.
That's me. I'll get my call.
I think that is going to be a winning answer. The Ciro Immobile won the European Golden Shoe, scoring 36 times.
In Serie A, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, not bad at all. Not bad at all.
Tell the truth, your thought process was there was his name couldn't be in this list unless he's the winner.
No, because I remember everyone was raving on about Cristiano scoring so many goals, but Immobile was ahead of him.
It doesn't matter how you get the right answer. If you get it, it's like a penalty. It doesn't matter if you scuff it, it crawls over the line.
Shane, as they say on The Chase, it was an educated guess.
Very smart. Well, David Meyler has a 1 point lead now. So the next question. In fact, we won't edit just there. Johnny Ward, I hope you watch American soccer. Which side won the 2020 MLS Cup? Was it Minnesota United, Seattle Sounders, New England Revolution, or Columbus Crew?
Absolutely no idea. So, what were the four again?
Columbus Crew, DC United,
Here, yeah.
Seattle Sounders, and I've clicked out of the question now, but let's just go with those three.
Well, you've narrowed it down there. Let's go with Seattle Sounders.
It was in fact Columbus Crew, Johnny, I'm sorry.
Oh, God.
They were the fourth one you called out as well, so...
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Johnny. Round 3. Question 1 in round 3 for you, Shane Keegan. Which of these sides...
Many rounds have we, Shane?
This is the third. We can do as many or as little as you want, lads. If you're... Like, David Meyler is the one who has the lead here, so I don't know if you want to... You'll want to get a question right, I think, just to save all the...
Could be here a while if you went to get one right, but go on, fire away.
Shane, which of these sides did not qualify for the Nations League finals by finishing top of their group? Was it Italy, Spain, Netherlands, or Belgium?
Not top of their group. We'll go with Netherlands.
Correct, Shane. Well done. Tell you what, the pressure is on Johnny Ward to get a point here. Okay, David, next question for you. Which of these managers won a trophy in 2020? Was it Antonio Conte, Pep Guardiola, Andre Villas-Boas, or Diego Simeone?
Can you repeat the answers?
Yep. So which of these managers won a trophy in 2020? Antonio Conte, Pep Guardiola, Andre Villas-Boas, or Diego Simeone?
I just don't know, was the League Cup played when the final was? I'll go Pep, because he won the League Cup, but I don't know because of COVID when it was played. Guardiola.
Correct.
Oh, God.
It certainly was the League Cup when they beat Aston Villa in that final, wasn't it 2-1?
I was just trying to think when it was played because of COVID.
Well, you got it right. I think it was back in April, maybe. So you're within the time frame. Like the next question, I have to be honest, Johnny. You've pulled the short straw here. This is a horrific question. Which of these? And if anyone's listening at home or listening in the car and you get this right, listen. Pat in the back. Pat in the back. Which of these clubs won their first ever league title in 2020? Was it Östersunds in Sweden, Nordsjælland in Denmark, Bodo Glimt in Norway, or Inter Turku in Finland?
I'll go with Inter Turku.
Östersunds.
It was actually Bodo Glimt in Norway.
Would you believe that's...
They're miles clear as well, aren't they?
You would have got that right, Shane.
I would, yeah. Well, we had
Molde
in our group from Norway. Obviously, we had Molde in our group.
Because they're miles clear of them, Shane, weren't they?
Yeah. I remember watching one of the games, and they said, they had wrapped up with like 9 games to go or something. But I remember what the commentator was saying. It was their first title. Yeah, good side.
I'm going to skip to if the tech op is listening, we're going to go to the very last 3 questions there. So we're going to start with, this is the last round. 1 more question each, just to give you all a chance to get another point.
Scores on the doors?
Scores on the doors. We've got David Meyler on 2. We've got Shane Keegan on 1. We've got Johnny Ward on 0. So the last round. Question 1, we'll give this one to you then, Shane. So Liverpool lifted the Premier League trophy at Anfield in July. Liverpool? It is a football quiz. It is football. Liverpool lifted the Premier League at Anfield in July to the soundtrack of which song?
Oh, wow.
I'm not going to give you any hints here.
Like the obvious, it's hard. Is this a trick question? I'm just going to go with You'll Never Walk Alone.
It's not. Unfortunately, it's not. Anyone know, David?
I have the thing in my mind, it's one of Coldplay songs. I don't know, I have the thing in my head, it's when a Chris Martin singing, I don't know.
That is very good knowledge on David Meyler's behalf. It is certainly Coldplay. It's a sky full of stars.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Well, you're very quick on the old Google machine.
Hey, you can see my hands, I'll hold them up.
If you're watching on the Off the Ball YouTube, Facebook or Twitter, you can actually see the lads with their hands in the air here as they try desperately not to cheat. Johnny Ward's hands I can't see at the moment, but we're going to trust him. David, next question for you. Which Premier League manager once visited the Grand Canyon and remarked, "I've seen it, what else have I got to see? I'm just looking at this big hole"? Quote from a Premier League manager this year.
I think I know this, actually.
I would give you all multiple choice here, but I think we can just...
Is there no multiple choice?
No, I'm not going to give multiple choice for these ones. Just to make it that bit more harder.
Sam Allardyce?
No.
Johnny, who do you think it is?
I know it was one of Klopp or Mourinho. I think it was Klopp.
It was Sean Dyche.
Ah, here.
Sean Dyche.
That seems fairly...
I thought it was maybe a trick question with Allardyce just taking over West Brom, because it would be something he'd say.
It's so annoying because I actually do remember reading that quote. How did I anyway, yeah. He sounds like a lad that's kind of giving you the dart scores, doesn't he, Sean Dyche?
He does actually, yeah.
Gravelly voice.
Tony Green, the late great darts commentator, yeah, absolutely.
You're a fan of the darts, Shane, of course.
Love a bit of the arrows. Christmas is darts and darts is Christmas, so that's it's well worth a watch. You know, it's a throwback. It's like one for the ages. I'm a big snooker fan as well. I'm like a kid who should have been born in the 70s or 60s maybe. Johnny, a final question for you, and this is the final question of the quiz, so if you're listening at home, let us know how you get on to 53106. But Johnny, which manager made the first ever quintuple Premier League substitution in June?
This is the new regulations, yeah, no idea. Can't remember what the first game was even. Don't know. Don't know.
You have a guess, will you?
Give us a stab. Have a guess, will you?
Jesus.
I'm pretty sure we listened to him earlier on the show after the match.
Ole Solskjaer. We'll give him a tick. Johnny, you get the point. Even though David Meyler held your hand and walked you to it doesn't matter.
What was the game?
I can't remember what the game was. It did look a bit ridiculous.
He made the 5 at the one time, didn't he?
He did. It looked a bit silly on the sideline, to be fair.
Yeah.
But United won the game. Well, listen, lads, that's the quiz. It was tough, I think. Like it was on the tougher end of the scale, I would say. But David Meyler's the winner, 2 points. At least there can be no arguments.
You did, like you said, there's 50 questions, so I imagine there's a few easy ones, a few medium ones, and a few very hard ones.
A few reasonable ones in there, to be fair. But it's not an easy quiz. I mean, there's the fact that you even said Coldplay, David. I think you should have got a half point for that. That was pretty decent knowledge. Do you remember the quote, Johnny? Just to give you one last one, fill in this blank in this quote from Jurgen Klopp. I'm blank compared to Diego Simeone. What did he say there? One of the famous quotes of 2020 as well.
Don't know.
Anyone know, lads?
No.
The kindergarten cop. And the kindergarten cop compared to Diego Simeone. See, it was a year of a few decent quotes from Premier League managers, to be fair.
Was that in reference to the dark arts employed by Atletico, or was it like...
I think potentially, yes. It was in the build-up to one of their games.
Yeah, here's one for Shane Keegan, actually.
No.
It's just a general question, and I think Klopp kind of screwed up on this one. He took Mane off in the first leg because he'd gotten booked and he was kind of being targeted by the Atletico players. Was that a good call or a bad call?
Depends. Well, look, he knows. It all depends on the temperament of the player, doesn't it? Because, like, you know, you'll have certain players in your dressing room who you will know can handle that and they won't react, and then you've got other ones who you'll be thinking, yeah, we need to get him out of here fairly good. Who happened with somebody recently that they didn't take him off? Who was that? Oh, Fred for United, wasn't it? Yeah, so it's very, I would think, very much dependent on the personality type of the player. You know, you'll have some within our Dundalk dressing room who you could kick them all day and they're not going to react, and then you'd have others who you'd be thinking, yeah, we need to get him out of there before he throws an elbow.
Lads, I just want to touch on Arsenal before we finish up. I mean, the half past 5 kick-off this evening at the Emirates, Arsenal against Chelsea, a pretty crucial North London derby, especially for Mikel Arteta, and his quotes earlier in the week, and we spoke about it in the news round earlier, but the quote which doesn't exactly make much sense. Last year we won against Everton with a 25% chance of winning. Last weekend it was a 67% chance of winning any Premier League game in history and a 9% chance of losing, and you lose. 3% against Burnley and you lose, 7% against Spurs and you lose. So I think he's essentially saying there we had a 97% chance of beating Burnley, but they didn't. So, David, what were your thoughts on Mikel Arteta essentially outing himself as the new Rafa Benitez?
I was very, even as you read that back to me, and I read it at the time, I was very confused reading it. If you want to look at stats, usually the stats that show the most are like whatever team outruns the other team usually wins the game. So that was one thing we used to pride ourselves on at Hull. We used to outwork teams. But I don't know where he's going with these percentages. They're just mind-blowing. Arsenal at the moment I feel kind of sorry for, Arsenal fans. I've got Arsenal fans in my family. My uncle's an Arsenal fan. They just lack leaders. They've no spine in their team. They have a couple of very good players that I like, but they're just a mess at the moment. I think the sooner he can kind of get to the summer transfer window and clear out half a dozen of them and bring in kind of good role models or good players who are willing to work hard, the better.
Shane, I mean, when you saw Arsenal up close early this year, did you think they'd be in this situation? And do you honestly think, legitimately, Arsenal could be involved in a relegation battle in the Premier League this season?
Oh, look, when we played them, Shane, obviously let's be honest, we were playing against Arsenal B, really, aren't we? Very much the team that they put out in the Carabao Cup and stuff like that we came up against, and they looked like class acts, but they are gonna look like that in a game where there's very little pressure on them. The problem with Arsenal pretty much always is that lack of character when the pressure comes on them. And no, look, I still think there's too much quality there for them to be involved in a relegation battle. I mean, I spoke about this with Neil the other night. The one thing I would say is that I'm surprised at Arteta. I understand he's under pressure, and having been there myself, I understand how you start to question everything you're doing when you do come under pressure, but I'm amazed at how he's gone away from everything that he stands for. From what we know from obviously being a Pep disciple, and that a guy who would feel that dominating possession is the way to go and all of that kind of thing. The Arsenal performances of recent have not been what you would expect of an Arteta team, and I don't think it's because the players aren't carrying out his instructions. I think it's because he started to give them very different instructions. I mean, this crack of, they finished one of the games recently with the most crosses this season. I mean, that doesn't stack up for me in terms of a Mikel Arteta team. So, it's not to be me. It's not my position to be giving Mikel Arteta advice, but I just think he needs to kind of find himself again. And like when the heat comes on Pep, and people say, the tick-attack of football doesn't take you anywhere, or go to the other extreme. If the heat comes on the likes of Sam Allardyce and, direct football is not the way to go, those guys double down on their belief of how football should be played. They go more extreme in how they believe their football should be played. Whereas Arteta seems to have wandered completely away from his own beliefs in how football should be played. To me,
did you notice, Anthony, in the Lansdowne Road game, Shane? Because I know you had your job to do, but obviously there's a bit of the voyeur in you as well, and you're up close with this guy who's under pressure. Because my memory watching that game was his body language wasn't great. Like, he looked like a bit exasperated even at that stage, and things have gotten a lot worse since. I was wondering, did you notice that frustration with him? Because I think, as you were saying, if you are completely in truth with your beliefs and you believe them, you don't kind of almost lose it like he has, as Shane referenced that kind of bizarre rant about stats as well. Did you notice, Anthony, in his body language?
Look, he was probably a little bit more engaging after the final whistle in the first one than he was in the second one, but that's kind of maybe looking for conclusions more so than anything. Like, in terms of that bit of a rant that he went off on, so apparently it's based on one of these kind of permutation models similar to XG and all that. It's kind of an XG for how the game should turn out. There's, he really shouldn't be bringing that kind of stuff. I thought his other way of trying to phrase it was much better, where he said if you're playing in an NBA match and you have 3 times more shots than the opposition, well, then there is only one winner. Whereas in football, you can have 3 times more shots than the opposition and end up on the losing team. So I do understand where he's coming from there. But yeah, the fact that he started throwing out all these numbers just made him start to look a little bit silly. And, you wonder what the talk was in the Arsenal dressing room after that. And that's probably the most worrying thing,
Yeah, it's the teams are in, I should mention as well, for that game, Arsenal and Chelsea at 5:30. So the Arsenal team sees Aubameyang on the bench, clearly not fit to make a return to the starting lineup. So Bernd Leno in goal, the back 3 in fact of Rob Holding, Pablo Mari and Kieran Tierney. In the midfield you've got Hector Bellerin, El Neni, Xhaka and Saka. And then in behind Alexandre Lacazette, you have Emile Smith-Rowe and Gabriel Martinelli. And then Frank Lampard has gone with his 4-3-3. Edouard Mendy in goals. The back four of Reece James, Kurt Zouma, Thiago Silva, Ben Chilwell. In midfield, Mateo Kovacic, N'Golo Kante and Mason Mount. And then up front, Christian Pulisic and Timo Werner, either side of Tammy Abraham. Very briefly, David, I guess, are you worried about the likes of Timo Werner and his clear drought in the Premier League at the moment? He can't seem to get a goal for Chelsea, and it's not just a drought where he's not scoring, it's a drought where he's missing bad chances.
No, I wouldn't worry about him. He's shown in the past that he's always scored goals when he was playing the Bundesliga. I think he'll come good, he'll score goals. I still think he's performing at a high level in the work he's doing. Of course, look, he'll be thinking, why can't any of these chances go in? But a case then, it's a bit like Aubameyang waited so long, but like on the flip side, that he's probably looking over, thinking, if I could have that many chances, I'd be scoring. But I just feel that once Werner gets that one goal, he'll probably kick on. I still think he's a fantastic signing for Chelsea. I'm a big fan of his. I've no doubt he'll come good and score a load of goals for Chelsea.
Listen, lads, we've had a couple of texts in as well. Happy Stephen's Day from sunny Florida. Can't agree with Johnny on the turkey take. Insisted on having turkey here among the shrimp, mahi-mahi and fried gator tail. Can't be a Christmas dinner without the turkey. That's Kieran Boyle on Twitter. So I think you've started an absolute war on Twitter, Johnny, with...
But here, turkey and shrimp? Never
it's
mind.
Florida.
Like,
anything goes in Florida, lads. Come on.
Shrimp.
It doesn't sound too appetizing.
Give me a break.
Well, listen, lads,
it's turkey and a bit of ham does everything.
Turkey and ham and a bit of stuffing, no bother.
Yeah.
David, you don't do anything at home. It's clear that your wife does everything, so your view is a little bit redundant, I think.
You wouldn't be a man for coddle, I'd say, David. We were talking about coddle earlier. You're a Cork man, so I assume coddle is not on your radar.
No, it's not. No, and even my wife is English, and she has the Yorkshire puddings. They're a no-go. Off my plate.
There's patriotism for you.
At its finest. Well, listen, lads, it's been an absolute pleasure, and listen, thanks for everything you've done on Off the Ball across the 12 months as well. It hasn't been an easy year, but to David Meyler, to Johnny Ward, and to Shane Keegan, the very best of luck. Happy Christmas, happy St Stephen's Day, and here's hoping to vaccines, pints, and plenty of football in the new year, I guess.
And darts.
Pints and darts. Happy Christmas, lads. Fair play.
Happy Christmas, lads. Good luck.
Yeah, that was David Meyler, the former Irish international captain, Johnny Ward, the broadcaster and journalist, and indeed Shane Keegan as well, the Dundalk FC coach, all speaking to us on OTB Football Saturday today and across the day with myself, Shane Hannon, here and Off the Ball. You'll get the full podcast of that up on the OTB Sports app or at otbsports.com. Of the 2 hour chat that we just had with the lads. Loads of really interesting takes on Brexit, on heading over to England as an underage player, on Stephen Kenny's first months in charge, and indeed on Manchester United's win over Leicester City a little bit, not the win over Leicester City, the 2-2 draw. Sorry to excite the United fans listening in, but United did take the lead twice in that game, but it did finish 2-2 at the King Power Stadium. So loads to tuck into, and plenty to get into over the next day or so on Off the Ball as well. We've got a busy show lined up for you tomorrow, because we've got 2 live Premier League commentary games. So 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock, the usual 6 hour long show. We've got the live game at 2:15. That's at the London Stadium, West Ham United against Brighton and Hove Albion. Stephen Doyle will be alongside Brian Kerr for that one. Then the 4:30 kick-off, you've got Liverpool against West Bromwich Albion. So Liverpool hoping to extend their lead at the top of the Premier League table. Dave McIntyre will be joined by Damien Delaney for commentary of that game. You can get the full podcast, as I mentioned, of this and every other episode of OTB Football Saturday, and indeed those Saturday panels that you might have heard a little bit earlier on, the snooker, the referee panels, and then the panel on Alone with the elderly discussion with John Giles and Rosemary Smith and Eddie Kerr about life during the pandemic. So loads of good things to get through today on the podcast. Big thanks to the production team as well today and across the year as well. Producer Dahi Boland, sound engineer Michael Quilligan, you've got Peter Malloy, Stephen McClune, vision mixer as well, Jojo Cardoso. Hope you had a lovely St Stephen's Day. Enjoy the leftover turkey and the ham, and Off the Ball. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon from 1 o'clock for those 2 live games. Best of luck.